Good evening and welcome to episode 67 of the Jacksonian. I'm yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me as the host of Locked On Oklahoma State, Cody Stovall, as we'll be going over our take on what happened in 2024, what needs to happen in 2025, what's going to happen to the Mike Gundy era, and much, much more. And let me tell you something, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, brother man. I greatly appreciate you having me back on here. And just to jump off into it, 2024 was probably a year that not very many in Cowboy country could have foreseen. Like, even if you were to say Oklahoma State's going to have a down season, 3 wins is not typically what is considered a down season, right? In the last 20 years, we've never had a season this bad, right? So it really gives you a lot to look forward to because we've kind of, I don't want to say had it on easy street, but Mike Gundy, death, taxes, and Mike Gundy winning 8 to 10 games has kind of been the norm for the last 2 decades. So it's kind of, I don't want to say nice being in a position where you have to rebuild, but at the same time, I think it could open some eyeballs. If you go from a 3-9 season to a potential CFP style of run, that completely changes the narrative. And I think it does a lot for Oklahoma State in particular.
There you go. I mean, the best thing about being down is the only way to go is up.
There you go.
That's
You're
just
absolutely right.
There you go. I mean, that's the way to look at it. And for those who somehow don't know about Locked On Oklahoma State, but would like to learn a little more, or don't know about you personally, should I tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just a dude who's obsessed with film and obsessed with statistics. I do get to travel and cover some 7-on-7 high school stuff, so that does kind of help me understand not only the lay of the land, but where guys are going, right? So whether they come to Oklahoma State or they're going to Houston or Texas Tech or wherever, it is nice just to get an understanding of what the talent looks like out there. So I dive deep into the evaluation stuff pretty regularly. I did play a little bit of college football, Friends University. Shout out to my Falcons out there. And dude, I was an individual that throughout being a fan, I always wondered, why does Oklahoma State get such limited access, right? Because growing up, you had to read 75 OU articles before you could read one thing about Oklahoma State. Now, granted, we were in a football university, and football does drive the bus for a long time. But as a kid and even as I got older, I still always wondered why OU got 75,000 times more content than Oklahoma State. So I felt like, we all do. We all yell at the TV and feel like we could be a coach. I would find myself yelling at the radio stations like, well, why don't they explain this more? Why don't they give us more access to the players? Why don't we have more understanding of what the spring looks like? And when this opportunity came open, I didn't have a resume. I'm not a professional journalist. But again, I've been tied into Oklahoma State for a long time. I follow it pretty religiously. And I think that something I could add that was a little different was I literally watch almost every single sport other than tennis. So if you notice, Locked On is a channel that goes off of monetary value, and football and basketball do drive the monetary bus. So I kind of, skirt out on the edges occasionally, and I do cover some softball and women's basketball as well, and wrestling. So, yeah, I like to kind of give a broad brush stroke to Oklahoma State sports, and I try to offer an avenue that we didn't have previously. That's all.
There you go. Well, I mean, if anybody's not checking you out for Oklahoma State content, they are missing out. I'm just telling you right now.
Well, I greatly appreciate the kind words. There's been up moments, there's been down moments, and I'm learning as the process goes. Right, I'll be honest with you. In the beginning, I was trying to pride myself on being like a guy that broke news, and then I've realized over time that that's really not a necessity. Right?
Yeah.
I just need to be more of the individual that provides a little bit of insight, but makes this thing fun. Because at the end of the day, whenever we're watching your favorite podcasters or journalists or whatever, you have to be engaging, but it has to have some level of excitement, in my personal opinion. And I do think that is something that I provide. That excitement level, man. You can hear it in my voice. You can read it in my face. You can sometimes see the veins in my neck having fun too. But that's just because I try to view this thing from a little bit of a different perspective. I'm not your typical fan that didn't play any college football, but I'm not a professional either. So it's a good mixture.
There we go. Well, 2024 was not the greatest of years, of course, because
It
it's
was
like,
a disaster. Just tell the truth, Jackson. It
it's
was a
all right.
disaster. All right.
Well, it was just a dumpster fire.
Yeah, there you go. That's
Like
better.
it was a dumpster fire with the Derp song playing in the background. Like,
Oh my God.
it's like, oh man, it was like it looked like things were gonna be great with that win over Arkansas, right? Because I mean, it's just you beat an SC team in Arkansas, and it looked like Arkansas gave that game away, in my
They did.
opinion.
Yeah.
And then like, surely you're not gonna be losing nine straight games, but apparently that happened. Like a close loss to BYU, close loss to Utah. Ooh, yikes. Shut out by Colorado. Oh no.
Yeah, dude. And I can tell you that Utah game, obviously there was a lot of animosity building in the offseason, primarily because of Utah fans. I'm sure you've noticed that they have been the one team that's joined the league that still continuously talks about how they're too good for the Big 12. They don't want to be here. They just have to be here, blah, 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 blah. And Oklahoma State and Utah were supposed to be the teams that were the most competitive last year. And we were both technically undefeated coming into that game. And being at that game, it had a very bedlam, electric kind of feel to it. Obviously, it did not go in our favor. And the rest of the season was a complete derailment. But you did mention BYU and why that is important for Oklahoma State fans or even non-Oklahoma State fans out there. The 17th year quarterback, Dr. Alan Bowman, has moved on. So now it's the Garrett Rangel and Haas Haney show, seemingly. And Garrett Rangel was the quarterback that was leading us to that BYUW before he broke his collarbone. And then obviously we had to go back to Alan Bowman, and it was much of the same, unfortunately. But this year is exciting because we do have somebody returning in Garrett Rangel that has been here for a while. He's played a few games. There's a decent understanding of what he could potentially provide. And then Haas Haney, anytime you have a quarterback that can run a 10-6 100-meter, that's approaching sub 4.4 speed. That's just hard to get at any position. So it does make things pretty exciting this year.
Well, and something that I noticed, that Baylor's beating y'all in Dave Aranda's little second half comeback of the 2024 season. Arizona State, worst to first, 2024. TCU, Texas Tech, Colorado. Now, I remember hearing you talk about Casey Dunn just like being a disaster for Oklahoma State, and seems like to me Oklahoma State took care of that by just firing his keister.
Yes, but if you recall, it took a little bit of the Board of Regents kind of muddying the waters on Mike Gundy's behalf before that kind of took place, which that's a conversation in of itself, right? We could talk for 45 minutes about why Mike Gundy felt the need to keep his buddies around, even though statistically in film provided proof that it just wasn't very good product. But at the same time, regardless of why Mike Gundy fired everybody, right, he did. At the end of the day, he still had to be responsible for firing all of his buddies. And I think that's another reason why there's excitement in Stillwater. We're not an NFL style of system. We never have been until now. Now, it remains to be seen whether this is going to work, but the entire idea, and this is coming from Mike Gundy himself, behind bringing Todd Grantham over from the Saints and his former stops in the SEC was to have, in his words, a head coach of the defense. And then Todd Grantham, because he was going to be the head coach of the defense, he brought in a lot of his own staff. This is guys dating back to his days at Mississippi State, 2016, 2017. Obviously, a lot of them coached together at Florida. A few of them coached together at Louisville. And then a couple of them branched off and had some NFL coaching careers as well. But they've all kind of come back together in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I think that is going to allow them to kind of bring forth the system. Plus, his 11 years, Todd Grantham in the NFL, I think is what is going to allow this to be entirely different. We're typically a squad, right, that has got a bunch of 2 stars that just develop in the weight room and then they catapult themselves into successful careers. It's not exactly like that anymore. right? In the transfer portal, because of the SEC and NFL cachet that these coaches now bring, we've brought in guys like Mordecai McDaniel from Florida, Chandavian Bradley from Tennessee, J.K. Johnson from LSU, Jalen Davies from UCLA. We're not your run-of-the-mill Cowboy squad anymore. We should look entirely different, and it's because all of the staff is new. Offense and defense. Almost every single coach is brand new, and that is exciting. I mean, it's the offseason, right? So we're all excited. We're all undefeated. We're all looking for a CFP run. But at the end of the day, it is going to be pretty odd to see Oklahoma State not rebound, because for even the Gundy haters, and I've been considered a Gundy hater myself at times, the one thing that you cannot say negatively about Mike Gundy is the year after. He usually has his biggest moments. The years we're supposed to win the Big 12, we always fail. The years that we're not supposed to be in the race at all, those are the years that we pop up there at the top.
Yeah, I mean, because like I remember like '09 where y'all were contending for a spot in the Sugar Bowl. Oklahoma shuts you out on rivalry week, and that was Oklahoma without Sam Bradford. They had Landry Jones at that time, and he was a freshman. 2012, Oklahoma State was expected to at least contend for the Big 12. They go to a bowl game.
Yep. With 2013, we were way better than OU and still found a way to screw that up. That's what people tend to forget, that my issues with Mike Gundy wasn't always the fact that he lost Bedlam. I mean, yes, losing to one team year after year is frustrating, but that's not even necessarily my biggest frustration. My biggest frustration was 7 of those losses to OU were either for the outright Big 12 title or for the right to play for the Big 12 title. So it's not just that we lost Bedlam, it's that we lost the opportunity of winning Big 12 titles. And that has been the only hindrance, in my opinion, to put Mike Gundy up there in the top echelon of coaches. If he had more conference titles, I think you do have to have the conversation about Mike Gundy being one of the GOATs. But with only one conference championship, it's hard to say that, right? And with OU being gone and Texas being gone, this should be a conference that we carry. But we did not do that last year. You just mentioned, though, here's the beauty of it. Arizona State went from 16th to first place. Boy, howdy, I hope that we begin the season 16th place. I don't think it's going to happen, but for betting purposes, I need to make some money back because last year I took it on the chin, as did many of my listeners, because the year prior, right, a lot of people were saying we're going to win 7 games. I was out on the we're going to win 10, 11 games island, and we did. So people listening to my show made money. Last year, people listening to my show did not make money. So, yeah, the worst to first thing, it's got a nice ring to it right now.
True. Well, and there is one bright side about 2024. You know, you got like the win over Arkansas, like some of those SEC people, they're like bragging, oh, well, we could beat the Big 12's best team. Yeah, well, the Big 12's worst team beat your Arkansas team.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I appreciate you trying to be nice, okay, but let me be the guy that crashed that party. Last year was an absolute disaster, and you mentioned in the beginning what kind of resulted in that, and I can tell you from all my conversations with the coaches that have left and some of the players that have either left or are still on campus, it was all complacency, brother man, all of it. Like the coaches, because they'd been together for a decade, 15 years, they just expected each other to do their jobs. And then those coaches expected the seniors to do the job of training up the newer guys. So our coaches were literally, we had a coordinator take vacation in the middle of the season after we'd lost 5 games in a row. It was stuff like that. And during that time frame, so that week of preparation, the freshmen weren't allowed to be in the same locker room. It's just a bunch of stupid stuff was happening this previous season. And it was all because nobody was checking in on each other. Everybody assumed, well, I have my job to do. I know that my buddy's going to do his job. And then the coaches just assumed that the seniors were being the leaders in the locker room. And that wasn't the case. There was not a checks and balances system. And then lastly, is we had a bunch of playing favorites. Again, that's probably the only downside to having, coaches that have been together for years is they do have a tendency to pick favorites. And whenever we had the COVID stuff, right? So last year we had a lot of those 6th-year, 7th-year COVID guys, you would assume, and it's safe to assume, that those guys would kind of man the locker room and keep everybody doing what they're supposed to and doing the extra film and doing the extra weights and doing the extra conditioning. But that's not what was happening. And then on top of it, we had guys getting NIL dollars that the certain coaches felt like they had to start. So even though on film you could see that they were a massive deficiency, they kept starting over and over and over. And I'm talking, dude, I swear to you, you can go back and watch. There are games last year where we have multiple players in the middle of the play on defense just start walking on the field, not even trying to pursue the ball carrier. That is when you know that you have massive problems, because did anybody get penalized? No. They got to start the next week and then the next week. And so you could come to Oklahoma State last year. You could be late to film meetings. You could be late to practices. You could walk on the field live during the game and still get rewarded the next week. That's why we had the problems that we had. Too much complacency.
That is so bad. Like, players not even trying. Like the takeaway for me is the coordinator taking the vacation in the middle of the season. Like,
well, technically he was a position coach, but he was the co-coordinator. That just kind of gave it away for any Cowboy fans out there.
I got a feeling he got fired.
Yeah, he did. But yep. I don't know, Mike Gundy. Somebody allowed him to take a break after we lost 4 or 5 games in a row. Like, somebody should have stepped in and be like, hey, love you, buddy, but we're getting our teeth kicked in and we're not fixing anything. Maybe we should postpone your little vacay.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And again,
where did he even go to vacation to? Like, good God.
I didn't ask. I didn't ask. I didn't care to ask. I was too busy breaking stuff. I couldn't believe it. I honestly couldn't believe it.
I gotta feel like the coach that did that, like that's doing that, he's probably going to some crap hole. Like,
he hasn't taken another job yet, ironically enough.
No, he shouldn't. Like, nobody should be hiring him, from what it sounds like. I mean, it's like, if you want to take a vacay, but don't be doing that in the middle of the season.
Right. Like, as a coach yourself, forget the top end guys like Gundy or whoever that should have curtailed it and said, absolutely not, we shouldn't do this. But how do you, as that coach, how do you not go to your wife and be like, hey, babe, I know you're probably going to throat punch me repeatedly, but I can't do this right now. We just lost 4 games in a row. Right. Like, I think that should have happened. But again, that didn't happen because other coaches thought other coaches would pick up the slack, and those coaches thought the seniors would pick up the slack. It was just a bunch of people dropping the ball.
Oof. I mean,
and the beauty, though, is here's the bright side. That's not going to happen this year, because all of those coaches, whether it be Todd Grantham or Ryan McNamara or Cap Didi or Jules Montanaro, they are on a mission. Right? Because some of them are getting up there in age. So if they can do something miraculous at Oklahoma State, then they're going to catapult that into a head coaching job in the next couple of years. But if they can't do that, then they might be a coordinator for the rest of their lives. Not to mention, some of the coordinators, they want aspirations to do things at some point in time. And if you bring Oklahoma State football, look at Jim Knowles. That's a perfect example, right? He was a good coach at Duke. He was a good coach previously, but his life changed at Oklahoma State because he took an Oklahoma State team that's not ever been known for defense, and he produced the number 3 overall defense in America. And he took that job into a massive payday at Ohio State, and then now he's won a national championship at Ohio State. So his time at Oklahoma State, taking us from 115th in the country to 3rd in the country, that changed his entire life. So if somebody can come do that again in Stillwater, we're over this we need coaches that'll stay for 20 years thing. I think with the transfer portal, NIL, and what we just experienced, if somebody's going to use your school as a launching pad, so be it. You have to take your opportunities to be good, because if you're not good, you're going to have a hard time recruiting, especially if you don't have an overabundance of NIL dollar bills. We're not hurting in NIL, but we're not doing great either, right? So you have to win. And these coaches are on a mission. They have something to prove, not only individually, But they also know that if you take Oklahoma State's defense and you create one of the top defenses in the country, your Ohio State jobs, your Michigan jobs, your Alabama jobs are available.
Yeah.
If you can do that at Oklahoma State, you're darn sure going to be able to do it at Ohio State. And Jim Knowles just proved that.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to make sure you got that Nets Jim Knowles. You're good to go.
And
And
man, it's hard to find. It
oh,
is. But I have, dude, I mean, it's hard not to have faith in Todd Grantham, right? It's funny.
yeah.
You being in the SEC, I'm sure you've heard the third and Grantham jokes, right? And
Yeah.
it's so Florida fans up and down will tell you that on first, second, and fourth down, he's one of the best SEC coaches ever, but he's one of the worst third down coaches in the history of Florida, right? According to them. But if you talk to Mississippi State fans, they think Todd Grantham is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they've been trying for years to get him to come back to Stark Vegas, right? So that dichotomy is very interesting, and I think his NFL model has grown even deeper at Oklahoma State, and that could be what is different between now and his last SEC stop in Florida.
Yeah. I think I wonder what's going to happen this year for Oklahoma State. I mean, it should be better than sits and sits, I'd say. But I mean, going
Right.
to Oregon, that's just scary. That's scary for week 2. I feel like they're going to put that on NBC for some reason.
I don't know, but it'll be a good litmus test, right? Am I going to sit here and hoot and holler that we're going to beat Oregon? No. I mean, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I'm also not completely remedial. Should we beat Oregon? No. But it'll be a good test because if that's a game that you keep close, because Oregon returns more than we do. Oregon's dealing with less transfer stuff than we are. They're dealing with less staff turnover than we are. So in theory, Oregon should win that game fairly soundly. Here's the beauty of it, though. If Oklahoma State finds a way to keep that game close, if we lose by 3, 4, 7, that at least lets us know kind of where we stack up. And it should give us a good understanding on where the season should be because Oregon's going to be a fairly veteran team. Obviously, they have some pieces to replace, but by and large, they're going to be multiple years in the Dan Lanning system. Arguably, they were the best team in college football last year. You know what I mean? Obviously, it didn't look like it in the playoffs, but leading up to that game, they seemed to be the best team in the country pretty clearly most of the season. So it'll be exciting if we keep that game close in Eugene, Oregon. I know our defense is still going to look kind of wonky, but it sets us up for a little bit of hope.
There you go. You got your bye week afterwards, and you get a little bit of rest after you play Tulsa. The conference slate, I'm really curious about it. I mean, Kansas State gives everybody a hard time, but it's in Stillwater, so that's good. Iowa State's in Stillwater, that's good.
Yep.
Central Florida, we really don't know which Central Florida we're gonna get from Scott Frost. Kansas, I feel like they're gonna bounce back
I
from
agree.
their 5-7 year. Texas Tech. At this point, I feel like Texas Tech's more of a basketball school than a football school these days. I mean, yeah, Texas Tech is winning on the recruiting trail in 2026, and
I was going to say, dude, they're spending Boone Pickens money.
Oh yeah.
They've got that level money, and they're proudly spending it. So,
Question is it going to be another 8-5 season for Texas Tech? Because at some point, fans in Lubbock are going to get restless. They're going to get mad. They're going to be throwing a hissy fit.
Well, you nailed it, dude. With the amount of money they're spending right now, 8-5 next year would be a disaster for those donors, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at like tweets from like On3 and Hayes Fawcett where he say, "Oh well, this 4-star is going to Texas Tech. That guy's going to Texas Tech. You better not go 8-4. You better have like a 9-3, 10-2 season in Lubbock, Mr. McGuire, because like at some point, there's going to be some people that forget about the Mike Leach era. There's not going to be like the young kids remembering, oh, Graham Harrell, Michael Crabtree from 08. They're not going to.
No, not really, unfortunately. Yeah, no, they've got to win. They're in that position, and we do have to go on the road, right? So that is going to be one of the games that is circled as difficult Going to the bounce house, we've already seen, is not easy, regardless of how good you are or are not. The bounce house is a pretty legitimate environment that does make it kind of fun. But you already alluded to it. We have 7 home games, brother man. So I don't know if Brett Yormark was looking out for us or what, but
I think you got the right kind of the right kind of treats for whoever made the schedule. Because like I remember Gundy was saying we got to do something like that for whoever makes schedule.
yeah. Well, and if you notice, we don't play BYU, we don't play Utah, we don't play Arizona State.
No.
So we avoid, I mean, arguably the heavy hitters from this previous season for the most part. So I think the schedule does line up fairly favorably for us. Most of the big games, Baylor has to come to Stillwater. Kansas State has to come to Stillwater. Iowa State has to come to Stillwater. KU has to come, or we have to go to Lawrence. So Lawrence, UCF, and Texas Tech are the games that you really got to kind of be worried about. But other than that, it does seem like a schedule that is designed to kind of get us back into the conversation of at least a Big 12 title.
Well, and I'm wondering if Houston is looking like they're going to be trending up for 2025. That's what I'm wondering about. I mean, maybe not against OK State, but I know they're going to be a heck of a lot better than Cincinnati because, like, as long as Cincinnati has Scott Satterfield, they're not going to be at the heights where they were with Luke Fickell or Brian Kelly. It's just not happening if they're hoping for that.
Oh, no, I agree with you. And obviously, I think Houston, I believe in their coach. What he did at Tulane was absolutely phenomenal. But here's one caveat to that. I think you could make the argument. As a matter of fact, I probably should have looked this up. But Houston only spent $2.1 million in NIL last year. You're not gonna beat very many teams ever doing that. So I would like to see what Tulane spent because I'd wager that Tulane probably spent more in NIL than Houston is. And I don't know how competitive you can be in today's market, only spending a couple $1 million. I mean, Oklahoma State, we spent like 5.6, I think, which isn't a bunch, but it's enough to keep you somewhat competitive. I don't understand how Houston anticipates being at the forefront of the Big 12 conversation if they're not willing to participate in the transfer market era. And it's not always about money, right? But you have to be at least somewhat in the ballpark financially to be in the running to get these kind of things. So I don't know, man. I would like to say Houston will have a better season. I don't know how they can justify spending that much or that little, I guess.
I mean, at least they'll probably be better than 4-8, I'd say. Maybe. It's like that's it, really, but not like 9-3. They're not going to have a Casey Keenum like year.
No, but I think they could be very similar to last year, right? Lose a lot of games, but Willie Fritz does have the ability to get them up for upsets. That's the thing is Houston might be that team that doesn't necessarily compete for a Big 12 title, but you dang sure don't want to play them if you're in the Big 12 title picture because they're clearly coached well enough to give you problems and give you fits. But another reason why I have some reluctancy in jumping on the Houston bandwagon is Willie Fritz did bring 7 or 8 Tulane guys with him to Houston, and you didn't really see a lot come out of it. So I don't know yet.
Yeah,
I'd say all that and watch us lose to Houston now, and people are gonna go back to this date. Thanks a lot, Jackson.
Sorry about that. Anywho, but Ollie Gordon, I'm curious about him. Now, I feel like he's going to be a draft steal for somebody, but who's going to be on the lookout for him on draft day? That's what I want to see.
Well, from what I've read, he's had multiple meetings with the Packers, the Steelers, the Cowboys, and one other squad. I don't remember who the other team is. But it does feel like, the Packers, Cowboys, and Steelers have been kind of bringing him in multiple times. And if you think about it, he does kind of fit that Steelers mold of a running back. Even if you took out Jerome Bettis and you talk about the Rashard Mendenhall, even Le'Veon Bell still had the ability to run people over. And
Le'Veon Bell's a mess.
So and then even Najee Harris. So they clearly they like a bigger running back, right? To have that duality of a Thunder and Lightning package. And the irony here is their Lightning guy is Jalen Warren, who's also a Cowboy. So, and they brought back Mason Rudolph. Selfishly, I think a lot of Cowboy fans would like to see Ollie end up in Pittsburgh, because how cool would that be to have Jalen Warren, Ollie Gordon, and Mason Rudolph in the backfield at the same time? For Oklahoma State country, we're all going to be Steelers fans if that were to come to fruition.
Well, if Myles Garrett's ever doing that stuff like he did on 2019, throwing his helmet on Mason Rudolph, Ollie Gordon's going to whoop his butt.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, right? Outside of Pittsburgh, most in the NFL country, they only remember Mason because of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
People tend to forget that he has had to fill in due to injury and lead the Steelers to a couple playoff runs, right? People tend to forget that he has won ball games in Pittsburgh that have got them to the playoffs, and then they completely cast them aside and everybody goes back to the helmet thing. So I'm just happy that he decided to go back. I kind of wish he would have stayed in Tennessee, but he wanted to go back to Pittsburgh. Tennessee matched the Steelers' offer, and he wants to finish where he started. And I think that's admirable. And if he has any hand in this equation, of course, Ollie Gordon will be a Steeler.
Oh man, like I remember like that whole Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett ordeal, like because it was like that was when the Browns were expected to just take the AFC by storm in 2019, and like nothing good came out for the Browns, and anything good that happened, like beating the Steelers on Thursday night, for example, that was more talked about to the point where it was like, oh, well, Myles Garrett was taking Mason Rudolph's helmet off, beating him on the head with it. Like everybody was talking about. There's even a Jeopardy clue on it. Like, I kid you not. Like, I think it's in like one of the December 2019 episodes or like one of the 2020 episodes.
Okay.
But that's bad if you're on a Jeopardy clue.
Yeah, a little bit.
Alex Trebek passed away in that light.
I'll be darned.
Like I'll have to send it to you to find it. Like I'll just be like, oh, there it was.
I dig it. Yeah, definitely do that.
Yeah, because I'm just like it's somewhere in the archives, but it's like I remember watching Jeopardy that very day, and I was like, wow, they're talking about Myles Garrett.
That's hilarious. And like, you know what? I wasn't even necessarily mad about that whole. The only thing that was frustrating was, remember, it was Myles was saying that Mason said like some racial slur.
Oh yeah.
But then all of the offensive linemen said that never happened. And then some of the defensive linemen right next to him said that never happened. And then you go back talking to Oklahoma State players, and everybody's like, no, there's no way Mason would say anything like that.
No.
And Myles Garrett just kept at it, right? Even though it had been debunked by like 11 different people, he kept saying it for years. Obviously, they've kind of calmed down on it. But, yeah, I wasn't even mad about that or the light being cast on Mason. It was the fact that Myles was trying to push out that Mason would say ridiculous stuff.
Man, and I remember like that was also the year where like Ben Roethlisberger got hurt against the Seahawks. It was in week 2 of 2019. Like out due to an injury, full season. And we're seeing like Mason Rudolph take over. And then we're seeing Duck Hodges take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, and for those that want to get a look back at it or get like a Cliff Notes version of the 2019 Steelers, just go look on Urinating Tree. Like that dude is funny, man. Like he's got a funny way of putting it. He got like the days of our Steelers and everything. And I just got to tell you, I hope that Ollie Gordon doesn't wind up a Steeler because that's an ugly quarterback situation. You don't even have Russell Wilson or Justin Fields.
Don't need them, man. Huh? It's the Mason show. And they're going to get, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is.
I really hope that Mason Rudolph doesn't get screwed over. Like, I'm hoping he can have some good weapons. But
well, he's going to have plenty of wide receiver, it appears. Because when you combine DK Metcalf, with George Pickens. Like, that's how is any quarterback going to suffer from those two dudes on the outside?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you would like to figure that if you have two of the most dominant receivers in the game on the same team, that alone should help you in the passing yards department. Because every good quarterback has always talked about you have to have a wide receiver that has the ability to bail you out. He's got two of them.
Yeah. And it's like the Steelers, they're like this weird Jekyll and Hyde team. Something I've noticed about them over like the last several years. And again, that's why I remember hearing Urinating Tree talk about this, where he said that they always tend to lose games that they shouldn't, and they win games they shouldn't. It's like they play up and down to their opponents, and
Well, maybe that's why Oklahoma State fans like Pittsburgh, because we see a little bit of the mirror imagery in ourselves. And I'll tell you, you mentioned Big Ben. I think Big Ben is more responsible for Mason Rudolph's and James Washington's careers getting derailed than anybody in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization.
No, it wouldn't surprise me.
Like, dude, Big Ben was not he didn't make it a secret that he did not like the drafting of Mason Rudolph. He thought it was, in his words, it was a complete waste of a pick. And James Washington was starting for a while, but then he got in the doghouse with Big Ben, and Big Ben kind of called him out publicly for not running a route right or not running in the way that Big Ben wanted it ran. And you just heard little stories about Big Ben kind of picking on James Washington because he came in as a Cowboy with Mason. So I harbor a lot of resentment towards Big Ben.
I don't
not as much towards Steeler Nation.
Yeah, because Big Ben, it was
he was a big baby, is what he was.
He thought he was still in 2008, and he wasn't. He sucked the last few years he was there. I mean, the last playoff game the Steelers had, and the Steelers got spanked. They got spanked. I was glad to see that smug prick just getting spanked in the NFL those last few years. I mean, I hated that the 2019 season didn't go so hot for the sake of the Steelers team and for the sake of Mike Tomlin. But, it's like 2018, that last year, you're teaming up. You're a diva, and your top two guys are divas. Like Antonio Brown, who called himself Mr. Big Chest.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what's Joe Rogan thinking bringing that guy? I mean, do you need a football guy on that bad? Like, Jesus. And Le'Veon Bell, like, throwing that little hissy fit, like, going, I'm not playing for the full season until you give me this amount. Well, karma kind of struck you because you didn't last the full 4 years at the Jets.
Well, I can tell you, wherever Ollie goes, I hope he's not put in a position where he's on a terrible team and he's thrust into action a little bit too early. Like being a Cowboy fan, it was awesome to see Chuba Hubbard rush for 1,100 yards this previous season. But the problem is nobody saw it because he was on the Panthers and they were terrible. So, you know what I mean? It's not fun having Cowboys do big things on a horrendous team that nobody gets to see. So hopefully he's just a piece in the beginning. And you know what? I'm not too concerned about his combine 40 time. Yeah, not good. But I've been covering Ollie for a little bit, and I did talk to his private running back coach. And whenever I text him and I said, hey, do you think that 40 is going to have a negative repercussion? He said, there's a reason that he ran the 100 or the 200 meter instead of the 100 meter. And I was like, okay. I get it. Short distance was never Ollie's thing, even dating back to high school. But you see it on the field, right? He did get clocked at 22.7 miles an hour a couple of years ago. So the speed is there. Is it going to be, make you miss in a phone booth speed? Maybe not. But whenever you're 230 pounds to go alongside of it, you should be okay. And he kind of fixed into that Derrick Henry, Najee Harris kind of role anyways.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think we'll see Gordon as a first rounder,
No.
obviously, but that's okay. Like that's the
Yeah.
beauty of not being a first round. That's the beauty of not even being a second rounder. Is like you could be that hidden gem for somebody, and those are like for all the people that have like really tuned in for the draft over the years. Where it's like if you're not the number one pick. No problem. No problem. You can be a fifth round pick and you can succeed.
Well, and I'll tell you, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's why it's imperative that Oklahoma State rebound this season. Because Ollie Gordon, before the season started, he was being projected as a top 20 pick. Now he's like a fourth rounder because of one disastrous season. So for us to have the ability to convince transfer running backs to keep coming to Oklahoma State or younger running backs in the high school realm to come to Oklahoma State, you have to rebound this year. You have to have a justification so that way you can say this 1 year was an outlier. Because if you have guys being projected as the number 20th pick or number 18 pick and you force them to be a fourth round pick, you're not going to keep getting those guys. So it's another big season for us because we have to stay at the forefront of the Big 12 conversation. Realignment is probably not done, right?
No.
If Oklahoma State has another 3-win season and realignment pops up, are we in the conversation of the top 50? Maybe. Probably not, though. So we need to win, and we need to get back to where we're supposed to be. Producing running backs and wide receivers out of Oklahoma State into the NFL, it's been clockwork. I don't think Ollie Gordon falling from first round to fourth round is going to completely derail that if we can fix it this year.
Just don't let him get drafted by the Colts, because that is a huge disaster zone. Like, I mean, because it's like they're like, oh, we're gonna have Anthony Richardson. Oh, look at the one big play he made on ESPN's. Like, you see what happens, Colts Nation. Jim Irsay,
it does seem like they sold the house for Richardson, and I mean he was good at Florida, but not that level good in my opinion.
I mean, like I remember looking at his number of completions against Florida State 2022, and it was 9 of 27 completed passes.
Yeah, not good.
Do these people not even look at the stats? Obviously not. They look at the little top 10 plays on Sports Center and not looking at the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, we know that idiot Jim Irsay does. Like, I hope I don't upset anybody at Locked On Colts or anybody that's a Colts writer, but not
dude. If I was worrying about offending people, I would not ever have a job.
True. I mean, like Irsay, complete total moron. Shouldn't be running an NFL team because when he makes decisions, he does it 5 minutes before he passes out.
Well, he's not as bad as Dan Snyder. That guy's a train wreck.
Oh, thank God that he's out of there.
Dude, I so want them to bring back the Redskins name. I really, really do. When I think of the Redskins, I think of some of the greatest, like Sean Taylor. Dude, I remember watching Clinton Portis as a Redskin was awesome. RG3, before they completely destroyed his knee 75 ways from Sunday, he was pretty cool to watch. So I just think for nostalgic purposes, it would be cool to kind of bring some of that stuff back and coincidentally be part of the reemergence because they had a really good year. Clearly, Jaden Daniels is likely to be a guy. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just a random thought that I had. My apologies.
No, don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. It's the Jacksonian where you can say anything you want, man. No worries.
I don't know. I don't know if you should have said that, but like, you don't want to get this thing flowing freely. See, I can't even speak words because English is a very hard language for me. I'm still learning as I go.
Oh, no worries, man. But the last part I've been thinking about also for 2025 and going into fall camp. I know it's a little early for fall camp and we're getting close to the end of spring practice, but what are the position battles that everybody needs to look out for Oklahoma State this season?
Well, the most popular one has got to be quarterback, right? Every university across the country that has any semblance of a competition, that's going to take precedence. And Oklahoma State is in that position where we have Garrett Rangel coming back after a few years of kind of sparingly playing, to Haas Haney being one of the top-rated quarterbacks that Oklahoma State's ever brought in, whether it be the transfer portal or high school. You also have Zane Flores, who was Mr. Nebraska, Gatorade Player of the Year a couple of years ago, threw for almost 10,000 yards, has the ability at 6'3", 218 pounds to run over anybody. Did play a little bit of running back actually last year for Oklahoma State during the spring. And then Milo Smith is the guy who finished the last 3 games of the year after Garrett Rangel got hurt. So that battle seems to be leaning more towards Haas Haney and Garrett Rangel. And it'll be kind of interesting to see how that shakes out, or if Oklahoma State gets a little bit creative and has some 2 quarterback sets. Because when you have 2 athletic quarterbacks and one of them is faster than 90% of wide receivers, it's got to be, as a coordinator, at least a little tempting to put 2 quarterbacks out there if they can both run, because it's going to numerically change things for the defense. So, of course, the battle between Haas Haney and Garrett Rangel seems to be worth the price of admission. Wide receivers, not really necessarily a battle, because we just had Talon Shetron go down with yet another injury. But Io Shotomite King is a guy that I was high on last year, 6'4", 225 pounds. He was somebody who played tight end in high school, and it didn't really look like he was going to, flourish. Found a way to grow into his body at junior college this previous season. Expect a big year out of him. As far as battles go, though, we have one linebacker position in the middle locked down by Brian McCoy, who'll fill in for Nick Martin. The other linebacker spot in the middle, the other middle linebacker spot, because we're going to be running likely a 3-4, because that's what Todd Grantham's been famous for most of his career, which you're going to have 2 of those middle linebackers. That battle for the other middle linebacker spot, whether it be Ike Esenwoon or Brandon Rawls or Gunnar Wilson or Jonathan Agumidu, that battle is going to be pretty fun to pay attention to. And then cornerback. I just mentioned we brought in J.K. Johnson from LSU. We brought in Jalen Davies from UCLA. We brought in Chase Pinkerton. His dad obviously still works in the NFL, had a decades-long career in the NFL. So that pedigree is going to be absolutely massive for us. And we were 138th in the country last year in total defense. You cannot have that happen and beat darn near anybody. So if we expect a resurgence, that battle for cornerback is going to be absolutely massive for us. And then lastly, I would say defensive end. It's going to be a little bit interesting because we're doing a pseudo defensive end linebacker thing, right? That Von Miller role. It's becoming much more popular. But whether it's going to be Deshaun Brown to finally solidify that spot on the outside of the defensive end, or is it going to be something like a Jaleel Johnson that has the ability to flex both the linebacker and defensive end? So are we going to go with a hybrid, or are we going to go with a more traditional? That'll be worth paying attention to as well.
For sure, man.
And you know what? Before we get out of here, I do have to mention, because you mentioned Ollie Gordon. So who's going to replace Ollie? I was leaning on Trent Howland, the Indiana transfer, right? 6'3", 245 pounds. He's an absolute animal. But I really think that the OU transfer, it hurts my heart to say it, but an OU transfer, Caleb Hicks, might actually take the cake this year. Rodney Fields was a true freshman last year that looked very promising. Trent Howland is a big body beast that we return. But Caleb Hicks, the OU transfer, has definitely been turning heads this spring so far.
Well, I'll be keeping an eye on Mr. Caleb Hicks for sure. Like, I am definitely interested to see what he's got going on for 2025. It's going to be magical.
Pretty impressive. It's been pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm ready to see some magic already. I mean, I'm just counting down to week 1, week 0. I am so ready for it to start.
What do you think? You think Caleb DeBoer's got a big run?
Oh yeah, I think people getting upset they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
And that's got to be kind of funny, right? I could only imagine being a fan of a 12-win or 11-win year being a catastrophic disappointment. Like that's got to be a wild ride for you, my guy.
I know,
especially being in the media space, right? This is something you got to do on a daily basis. So you have to take into consideration what's happening on the field, but you also have to respect the pulse of the fan base. And I'm sure it's got to be hard for you to see tons of talent, but losing one game is the end of the world in Alabama country.
I mean, because it's like, you're not going to see me having a hissy fit after 1 year for going 9-3. That's not going to happen. But I mean,
Right.
if it's like, if you're coming up short every year, then there's a problem. But I think DeBoer is going to get us to like 10-2, 11-1, maybe. Like, I'm not expecting SEC titles every year. I
Right.
want Alabama to get to the semis or the natty. Get in that. I'm not expecting 6 more names. That's not happening. It's
Well,
like,
I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think anybody should expect for what Alabama was doing under Nick Saban. I don't think in the new NIL and transfer market area, I don't think anybody's going to control it the way that Bama had for the last decade plus because of the amount of talent. Especially now, here's the biggest X factor: the 105 roster limitation. Like, there's going to be phenomenal, like Oklahoma State. We're going to lose a few guys that are really, really, really good just because they haven't really hit their peak yet, but we don't have time to let them hit their peak because we got to get down to that 105 roster limit. That is going to force even bigger transfer portal additions, in my opinion, all across the country.
well, I'll be definitely making sure to do videos on it as soon as possible. Like, it's like if Alabama's getting this guy or losing this guy, I'll be like, get one of my buddies I'm doing the show with, Crimson Tide Live and the Alabama College. I'll just be like, hey, you got time? Let's do a video.
I love it, dude. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game, right? It used to be if you had Bama money or Texas money, you could have 175 guys on your roster and it not really hurt you financially. Well, now that's not even an option. So if you wanted to have 300 dudes on the roster, you remember the gray shirting and stuff that Texas and Nebraska used to do way back in the day in like the Big 8 days? Well,
Yeah.
that's why they controlled football, because they would do all that gray shirt and they would maneuver numbers and, you know what I mean? They would stack the deck. And in old school coaches have even talked about it. Sometimes we would fill our roster with 170 dudes just so the school down the road couldn't have them. Well, you can't do that anymore, right? So
Yeah.
there's going to be more of a level playing field, in my opinion, all across college football, because your Bamas, your Auburns, your Georgias, they can only have 105 dudes. So they can't stack the deck with a bad mamma jamma that they know should kind of be a starter, but they don't really have to start him yet because they've got a equal dude ahead of them. Those days are done. The
Yeah.
level of competition has changed, unfortunately, to some degree forever. And I don't necessarily agree with the 105 limit. I think that's a little thin, okay? But nonetheless, I think it is going to do a lot for those fringe guys that maybe had an injury, and that's why they weren't starting, or they had difficulty with progressions in a particular playbook, right? Mike Gundy just talked about this the other day. We brought in 32 transfers. After spring and fall, we'll probably keep around 25 of them. So does that mean we're going to have 6, 7, 8-ish guys leave? Yeah, probably, because some guys are going to get here and they're going to realize maybe I don't fit in this scheme, or maybe I don't fit in this system, or maybe I'm not a stand-up outside linebacker here. Maybe I need to be a hand in the dirt DN somewhere. So you're still going to lose some of those guys that should be contributors, that could be starters, but there's limiting factors that equal them wanting more playing time. It is what it is.
Well, before we get out of here and tell everybody where they can find each of us, I've been thinking about a realignment trade, like, because like how you can remove teams from a conference or something like that. Well,
Oh, in the video game?
uh-huh.
Yeah.
What if we had like a realignment trade? And I've got the perfect one, and you're gonna love this.
Okay, hit me.
Oklahoma State is in the SEC, and in return, Missouri is back in the Big 12.
I mean, I don't love it. I don't love it. I love you for suggesting it, and I do think that Mizzou is a massive waste of space that doesn't belong in the SEC. But I don't know, man.
It's more of the fact that Missouri Arkansas and rivalry week, they've been pushing that.
Oh,
It's just not gonna be a thing. Not ever.
well,
No.
I think that Oklahoma State, Arkansas. See, that might even be a better argument. Should Arkansas be in the SEC or the Big 12? I think obviously there's a lot of reasons that make it make sense. Even if you go back to 1978, when Arkansas was going through the voting process to be in the Big 12, and the Big 12 commissioner back then was an idiot and said no. But so we've been licking our chops for a long time. When we play them in baseball, it's always an epic, massive showdown. So
Yeah.
I would like it. Football was a good game. We have another game with them here in a couple years. But as you well know, we have a home and home with Oregon before a home and home with Bama,
Yep.
baby.
2028, 2029. We'll get it rocking and rolling by
I'm
that
so
time.
pumped. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man. Like, hey, who knows? Maybe I'll be like growing a little bit of a beard, and like that beard's gonna get bigger. So
Do
we'll
it,
be
man.
there. We go. We'll probably be partying it up by that time.
I like it.
There we go. And speaking of Locked On Oklahoma State, what have you got going on there this week and next week and the
Well,
next week?
so ironically enough, the next show that's about to drop is about the dichotomy between the quarterback race that we have going on, and I'm going to draw some parallels back to 2019, where we brought in a coordinator that kind of made his name off of running multiple quarterback sets. The spring, we have a spring game finale that is something that is pretty exciting to be talked about. There should be a time where we finally get to go up against other competition for the spring. But yeah, man, we've got some recruiting things that are happening. I don't know if I'm sure you've been paying attention. Oklahoma State, there's something cooking down in Stillwater right now. We've had a lot of 5-star and 4-star guys getting onto campus, taking official visits, which, that doesn't mean anything. Getting them on campus doesn't mean anything. But a lot of these dudes are having conversations when they leave the campus, and the players, the high school recruits, are saying that there is something happening in Stillwater that just makes you want to be around for it. So as long as we put the proof on the field this season, I do anticipate having a much bigger conversation about Cowboy recruiting in the future.
There we go. And tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the magic that Cody Stovall is bringing on Locked On Oklahoma State. Let's get the 10,000 subs and check him out on All Day O State on @/Twitter and on O State AD on Instagram. And you can learn more about Locked On Oklahoma State and Cody Stovall himself on the Locked On Podcast website. And you can tune in on Locked On Oklahoma State on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and on Amazon Podcast as well.
Look at you go, buddy.
There you go. I mean, that's what I'm making sure I always do for each of my guests is practice on the promos before, during, and after.
Well, very well played, sir.
Well, thank you, man. And then we got the 32nd edition of Crimson Tide Live. No, Coach Burtz and Jeffrey were not there. Coach Burtz was out on vacation for this week, and Jeffrey had only taught sports. Well, the bat signal called him elsewhere, but luckily he will be back for the 27th edition of the college show. But I did find some good substitutes, and you'll love these guys if you haven't watched it. They are Alabama Richie, who you watch on Wager Wire or on the Alabama Call-In Show. And there's Nick Saban Jr., although that's not really his real name. That's his stage name. But he is a go-to insight on Alabama football. And podcasts and shows should definitely have that guy on for sure. And then there's our special guest from the night, Coach Smook, where we all discussed what to watch for on A-Day. And we gave a look back at the legacy of Julio Jones through the NFL, through college, and through high school, and so much more, including recruiting updates on Xavier Crowell. He even commented on the show. I was like, wow, cool. But we'll be seeing if we can get him on for Crimson Tide Live. And then there's the 27th edition of the Alabama College Show, where Jeffrey and I take your calls on Alabama with the Voice of College Football, where we talk about Alabama football, we have trivia nights, and so much more. And you can check me out on Jackson Johnson 979 on YouTube, where I not only have numerous episodes of the Jacksonian, but I'll also collaborate with my buddy Will and D on the Buzzer Beater for college basketball news. And I collaborate with Austin from Sports Talk with Austin on the Pass the Mic show, late nights, either on Tuesday nights, Monday nights. We're still kind of ironing out the details. But for more updates on who's coming on Alabama with the Voice of College Football or on the Jacksonian, Check me out on X/Twitter on JacksonVOCFB and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another video whatsoever, and we will see you soon. Have a good weekend, everybody.